All right, so here we have our beginning compost, and we're still adding stuff to this bin. Over here, we have some middle compost. We stopped adding materials to this bin, and we're just letting it compost down to its finished product. And over here, we have our finished compost. And to make this a little more manageable, we're gonna try and sift our compost now. So usually what I do is I take a shovel and I scoop out a bunch of the compost, and I put it onto our sifting screens over here. And I found that when we take the compost out and it's wet, it's really hard to sift. So I usually let it sit for a day and dry out. And then I take my heavy duty gloves and I just rub this through the sifting screen. And we're gonna end up with really nice finished sifted compost material there, which is much easier to use in our garden. Now, at the same time as I'm sifting, I'm also looking for contaminants that might still be left over in the compost. So you can actually see there's a lot of sticks here. We really don't want those. I usually just kind of take those out, throw them in the bushes, throw them in the field. It's kind of wherever. It's not really a big deal. They'll eventually decompose. But I'm also looking for like pieces of plastic and produce stickers, which we end up finding a lot of those. So for instance, here's a little piece of plastic. We don't really want to put that in our garden, so I'll set that off to the side. And I actually, as you're sifting through these and you collect these trash items, so I have a bunch more over here, we have a nice little trash bag right here you can just toss those into when we're done. So once you've sifted all of the good material through, you might end up with something like this, where we've got all the junk left over. A few of these things we could actually throw back into the compost bin. For instance, here's a little husk of corn. That'll still kind of decompose now that it's broken down to a small piece. So I'm just gonna toss this back into our active compost bin over there, and we'll let it work a little bit further. The sticks are not gonna work too well. Sometimes seeds, like here's a peach seed, these are really hard. They're just not gonna decompose. So I'll generally just take this stuff and either kind of toss it off to the side into the bushes or into the ground here. And I'm still making sure to remove all the plastics and trash and stuff like that. And so then once we've got all our finished compost, we can just wheel our barrel over to our finished compost pile out in the garden there. And you can see that kind of taller, dark pile. Those are that's all our finished compost that we've produced here in our compost bins. So once you've dumped the compost, the finished compost into the garden, and you have your empty screen here, we're gonna just load it back up with new compost so the next person who comes by can sift the next batch. So I'll just use my shovel, dig out a good pile of compost here, and I'll spread that out on my screen. And then I actually want to just start looking through it just a little bit. Like here's an obvious piece of plastic. I'll just pull those things out. And I'm actually just gonna kind of pull it to the side, and I'm looking for worms. Because if we leave the worms in here, they're gonna dry up and die. And it'd be nicer if we just throw them back in our compost. So I usually just kind of paw through here gently, just looking for worms, looking for contaminants, seeing if I see anything I obviously need to pull out. Here's a mango seed. They don't work, so we'll just toss that over there. Here's a avocado pit that wasn't cut up enough. Again, we'll just get those off out to the side. And I don't see any worms in this batch. I think as we get deeper in the compost pile and it gets wetter, we're gonna find more worms in there. So just kind of take a few moments to look for the worms. And you can fill it up with probably 2 or 3 scoops from there. And again, just let it sit out in the sun, let it dry for a day. And then you can come back the next day and sift it through, or let someone else come by, and that's basically the whole process of sifting our compost. Just makes it more manageable for us to use in the garden later, gets the contaminants out. So thanks for your help. We appreciate you guys taking this step and helping us out here.